and welcome to the first episode in my new series, The Nature of Addiction. The nature of the phenomenon that we call addiction can be characterized and understood in many ways. In fact, addiction is wildly misunderstood, compartmentalized, and it largely goes unnoticed in our society despite the epidemics of addiction. But it is because of these epidemics, of massive amounts of people dying before their time at the hands of addiction, that I share this series with you. It is possible to pass the test of addiction. And the good news is that the exit out of addiction evolves you on the path of your true self. Recovering from addiction, more often than not, makes the whole journey of addiction worth it. The awareness, the blessings, and the strengths that show up on your path to getting well and then better are so immense, and momentum is boosted so much that the journey starts to look more like a blessing. And many people have referenced their addiction as a school of life. The nature and force of addiction is powerful beyond what most of us are willing to look at. The force of addiction leads a person to turn against themselves, even to the point of killing themselves, and at the cost of nearly everything they have while still alive. Addiction inhibits people from being their best and reaching their highest, and can parallel a life at its lowest vibration and lowest yields. Yet, our modern-day culture can be defined by society losing itself to the addiction phenomenon in countless different manifestations. However, in the reverse, the experience of having persevered through addiction and come out the other side, now that's the definition of powerful in the other direction. This is the power that develops through personal growth and cultivation that helps a person to transcend addiction. The only true way to break the cycle of addiction is to transform oneself from within. Addiction is thus a curse and it's a blessing, and each person has the power to decide for themselves how their story of addiction will end, because one way or another, it will end. Through my research, I have discovered that addiction can become your worst nightmare, or it can spawn your greatest achievement. Addiction can take years and decades off your life, constantly pulling people and things down around you. Or, in the recovery from addiction, it can deepen the quality and value of your life and relationships. Due to the level of awareness and commitment that is needed to break the spell of addiction, the path of transformational recovery becomes the entrance to the journey of the true self. Now, let me ask you, if you knew that your journey with addiction could connect you with your life purpose, and that the power existed within you to pass these tests, how would that change things for you? As I will share in this video, there is no easy way to illustrate the magnitude of addiction in its fullest sense. To really know and understand addiction is to have been deluded by it and trapped for an extended amount of time. The endless cycle of addiction exhaustively rotates people through craving and reward, maintenance and regulation, abuse and consequences, to hope and motivation, back to relapse and regret, and shame and agony, where it repeats again. And a clear explanation for this irrational and destructive behavior cannot be fully explained, nor is there one agreeable definition. Now, the perspectives that I am about to share come from personal experience with addiction, hundreds if not thousands of experience reports of other people going through addiction, and hands-on experience coaching a lot of people through the transformational experience to naturally mature out of addiction. I did not learn these things from academic textbooks. Although textbook definitions and scientific findings can provide some insight, they can also limit the scope for us to observe addiction in all of its forms. Rather, through real-life testimonials coming from altered states, where people are more in touch with the multidimensional nature of addiction, we can expand our perspective by including the invisible data as well. So, looking deeper into the nature of addiction now, there are many faces to addiction. It is a multi-layered and multi-dimensional phenomenon. So note that it is perfectly normal and fine for you to see addiction different than maybe someone else sees addiction. And that is because everyone has their own relationship to it. And addiction can show up heavier for people in different areas of their life. For instance, for some people it can be more mental, for somebody else it's more physical, and for someone else it's more relational and spiritual. So let's take a journey through the nature of addiction now, exploring how addiction thrives through 8 aspects of the human realm. Number 1, addiction engages spiritually. The first to mention is by hovering. Addiction is a mysterious and merciless phenomenon that occupies the human realm. It hovers over everyone's life, manifesting in the attachments between people and things. For example, everything mainstream these days calls out for people's attention and buy-in, trying to create an attachment with you. Sugar snacks at every stop, coffee and beer on every corner, screens at the center of social connection, entertainment 24/7, competitions of every kind, and a mentality for fame and fortune. Now, that is addiction hovering over you. So many swift, sweet, and sparkling things that come at a cost. So everyone is susceptible to addiction because the temptations are everywhere and they are lurking around people's attachments and vulnerable areas. Second to mention, addiction engages spiritually by enchanting. Addiction enamors people through instant relief and rewards, exploiting vulnerable areas of resistance to one's own pain and responsibility. The methods offer such reliable relief and resolve in the moment, people forget the greater preservation and mission of their true self. For instance, cigarettes. Cigarettes soothe and stimulate and satisfy cravings to alleviate discomfort in the moment, but the effect is short-term and it just ends up adding toxicity and discomfort to a person. The more that a person turns their power over to a cigarette, the more that aspect of themselves develops, perpetuating the self-destructive entrapment. And for a third example, addiction engages spiritually by possessing. Addiction has a spirit of its own that possesses the disconnected human spirit. A spirit embedding itself inside the human mind, body, and field, feeding off the ecstasy that is synthesized through the engagement of things. Through spellbinding ways, connecting and feeding off of human behavior for its own survival at the cost of the person's life. Addiction could be then likened to the vampire energy. So, addiction thrives spiritually by hovering over the human realm, enchanting people through instant gratification, shortcuts, and gimmicks, and possessing those who give their power away in exchange. Number 2, addiction operates energetically. The first to mention is by magnetizing. The energy field of addiction attracts and pulls vulnerable people in. The field is alluring, seductive, and always tempting. The field is sticky like a spider web. The more wrapped up you get, the harder it is for you to get out. For instance, gambling, which goes beyond money, by the way. People can gamble a lot of things. But let's say that you gamble your last $1,000 away and you lose, and you can't afford your bills and rent. The field of addiction magnetized you against your better judgment. It plays on attachments like escaping, thrills, winning, and power. For a second example, addiction operates energetically by consequencing. Addiction is an effect. It happens as a result of something else. Whether addiction develops as a result of unresolved trauma and karma, or whether addiction happens when people put more weight on external things than internal responsibility. It is an effect of giving one's power away continuously. And addiction also operates energetically by encumbering. The field of addiction is a field of resistance, working against human awakening, transformation, and growth. The field of addiction depreciates the value and purpose of life. It reroutes priorities, overrides self-care, lowers standards, pushes problems under the rug, forfeits ambitions and personal agency, neglects important things, misses opportunities, and yet a person works tirelessly to serve their addiction. So, addiction thrives energetically by magnetizing vulnerable people to its field, consequencing people for giving their power away, and encumbering people's growth. Number 3, addiction compensates emotionally. First to mention is by rewarding. Addiction works because it activates reward centers in the brain and body, causing people to feel good. Addiction produces a high that lightens and brightens perspectives, feelings, and sensations in the body. Through addictive rituals, people can synthetically and consistently create positive emotions for a moment of time. Now, another way that addiction compensates emotionally is by relieving. Addictive rituals numb emotional pain and discomfort and the ache of egoic insecurities too. For instance, the stress and overwhelm of having to do so many things at once and to hold up an image while doing so is tempered by addictive behaviors to prevent a person from blowing up or breaking down completely. And for a third example, addiction compensates emotionally by stimulating. Addictive behaviors energize one's mood, driving creativity and performance. Many people rely on addictive things to function. It is not all about feeling good and escaping problems. It is also about pressures and pursuits to survive, function, and achieve. So, addiction thrives emotionally by rewarding people with feel-good emotions for participating, temporarily relieving pain and discomfort, and stimulating mood and performance. Number 4, addiction functions mentally. First to mention is by deceiving. Addiction is the great deception of the material world. Addiction is the false belief in external things to resolve internal discomfort and dis-ease and personal and life matters. Addiction creates the insensible allegiance to the repetitive enactment of a ritual through the diehard conviction in that addictive ritual to protect and prevail in the bigger picture. And this program continues despite the daily negative consequences because it presents the illusion of progress, but really it's suspended in a cycle. This is because the instant gratification and benefits of addictive rituals fade every time. But still, once people discover ways to quickly resolve the discomfort of their issues or how to get an immediate boost to their perceived level of capability, the tendency to continue to turn their power over to things becomes stronger. When this power is externalized repeatedly through the conviction in that thing to outperform what a person can do for themselves, that is when the phenomenon of addiction sets in. Next, addiction functions mentally by distorting. Addiction creates backwards and illogical thinking, putting itself at the center, twisting the truth, such as, I need this or that because I'm not feeling well and I'm in pain, instead of, I'm not feeling well and I'm in pain because I keep relying on this or that. Or, I have to do these things to fulfill my responsibilities every day, versus I'm having a hard time keeping up with my responsibilities every day because I keep doing these things. And for a third example, addiction functions mentally by dominating. Addiction consumes and controls people's thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, constantly occupying the mind. A person's worldview and narrative about life is reduced to the negative side of things, constantly unfulfilled and judging what isn't right. This allows addiction to dominate a person's mind by being their savior every day. So, addiction thrives mentally by deceiving people into believing the answers and solutions come from external things, distorting logic to put itself at the center, and by dominating people by constantly occupying their minds. Number 5, addiction informs personality. The first example is by egotizing. Addiction is self-serving and self-centered in satisfying its own needs at the cost of everything and everyone around. Now, this doesn't mean that everyone will choose to get high over feeding their children, but if it's a true addiction, the addiction's needs are going to take priority over the best interests of oneself, others, and the environment around. Next, addiction informs personality by consuming. Addiction is obsessive, compulsive, and excessive. It is even aggressive and progressive, dampening and shortening life. Addicted, people go to the extreme to satisfy needs, cover up tracks, overcompensate, and make ends meet. People are led to do things that they never imagined were possible, whether positive or negative. Under the influence of addiction, it could be an extreme creation, an extreme competition, or crime. Either way, addiction leads people to go to extremes. And for a third example, addiction informs personality by defending. Addiction is a defense to fear, pain, discomfort, and disconnection. The lifestyle is a way to avoid and escape, soothe and ground, and brighten up and enliven the moment without having to deal with burdens first. Addiction causes people to become resistant to feedback, to deflect truth, to oppose change, to create conflict with those who encourage change, and to use reactive, edgy, uptight, or sarcastic methods to defend the addictive way of life. For instance, a person yells out over their friends, "I fear nothing in this world," after a 12-pack of beer. Their real fears are suppressed under the intoxication, which is what's driving them to abuse alcohol regularly. Traits like arrogance and debauchery are used to conceal these core fears and to defend the unspoken addiction, which is really just the armor for a person's unresolved stuff. So addiction thrives personally by egotizing every interaction for its own gain, consuming things regularly to keep needs satisfied in the moment, and defending against pain, truth, and change. Number 6, addiction controls the body. For a first example, it does this by hijacking. The experience of addiction feels like something has taken control of the brain and body, making a person perform addictive rituals regularly despite negative consequences and wanting to stop. A person will say repeatedly, "I don't want to do that anymore," or "I won't do that anymore. I'm done with that. I am moving on. No more." And 20 seconds later they say, "Okay, why not?" or "Okay, just one more time." While a person may desperately want to stop and change, the body continues the behavior regardless and relentlessly. Once addiction takes hold, there is no clear way out, and a person finds themselves trapped at every turn. Next, addiction controls the body by depending. The physical body becomes reliant and sometimes physically dependent on a substance or behavior to feel good, find relief, and function. The inevitable increases in tolerance and physical dependency initiate withdrawal symptoms in the absence, and combined with intense cravings, can become too unbearable and uncontrollable for an individual to stop on their own. And for a third example, addiction controls the body by craving. The constant yearning for addictive things and rituals cannot be fully satisfied. An addicted body is always hungry, trying to fill a void inside by feeding on the energy found in the attachment to things outside. Addicted, the body becomes the conduit for the phenomenon of addiction to play out its program to imprison people in complete powerlessness in the material world. As long as a person keeps getting little rewards in the moment, but they are never fully satisfied, they will continue depending on things for resolve. So, addiction thrives physically by hijacking the brain's control centers, getting the body depending on particular things to feel good and function, and keeping the body in a state of craving. Number 7, addiction saturates society by first programming. The program known as addiction is a force of nature on a mission to incorporate people into the material world. A program that entices the dependence on external things for immediate gains over inner wisdom and ability to obtain consent to participate in the social material matrix. The consciousness of addiction programs society by highlighting so-called problems and then by offering so-called solutions to everything. The program is delivered through advertisements and promises of benefit, and also by creating new beliefs, ideas, desires, attachments, and expectations for how we are to engage our relationship to things. Addiction also saturates society by normalizing. Addiction standardizes and streamlines itself into society in everyday living through the disconnection and re-education of people. Addiction teaches people to turn to external things to relieve everyday discomfort and resolve everyday problems. The more things that are created, the more ways that addiction can manifest into people's life. And because it happens in any and every form at different levels, the phenomenon of addiction becomes disguised. Addictive things and rituals become so common and such a necessary part of our daily routine that the patterns of addiction go unacknowledged, and the consequences too become normalized with addictive solutions in place for them as well. And for a third example, addiction saturates society by incentivizing. Addiction offers immediate perks and rewards, from relieving anxiety, insecurity, and conflicts to boosting mood, energy, esteem, and performance. Addictive things help people put their guards down and grievances aside to come together and work things out and create new things. People are incentivized to utilize addictive things to create other things in the social material matrix, which also incentivizes the stakeholders on up from there. So, addiction thrives socially by programming beliefs and trends into society that are addictive, normalizing addictive behaviors for immediate gain, and incentivizing social affairs with perks and benefits. And lastly, number 8. Addiction presents opportunity. The first to mention is by testing. Addiction is a test of free will, a test of faith, a test of truth, a test of strength, and a test of one's heart. Addiction tests people at the level of mind, body, heart, soul, and spirit. The being part of human being is earned through these tests, and the journey of addiction offers an opportunity to face any number of these tests, trials, and tribulations in the purpose of passing these tests by actually integrating the wisdom that lies therein. Next, addiction presents opportunity by challenging. Addiction targets unresolved stuff, fears, notions, attachments, traumas, karma, imbalances, and deficiencies. When people are not resolving underlying burdens related to pain, discomfort, and suffering, that is where the tendency for addictive things chimes in. Hence, areas of addictive activity point to something unresolved, incomplete, or out of whack within oneself, challenging them to address it. And for the last and most important example, addiction presents opportunity by opportunizing. The remarkable and desperate journey of addiction and the consequences of a lifestyle built on instant gratification and delayed suffering brings a unique level of awareness and skillfulness for a person. At its peak, addiction creates a sense of urgency to turn one's life right side up, make things right with others, and fulfill the path of the true self. There is an immense spectrum of opportunity in the recovery from addiction. You and your loved ones do not have to achieve perfection before you can benefit from the process of transformational recovery. In fact, waking up inside of addiction and starting your work when you are still struggling not only creates momentum to ease your road ahead, but it gives you the chance to work through your stuff as you temper your desires and addictions. The opportunity for leveling up is exponential coming out of addiction, and that is because the process engages you as a total person in all aspects. Clearing your mind, unburdening your heart, cleansing your body, cleaning up your home, restructuring your lifestyle, strengthening your character, and awakening your soul's journey transforms darkness in all of these areas. It becomes easier to identify opportunities and to get inspired and to get energized to take positive action. And it also gets easier to trust in yourself to navigate these opportunities with skillfulness and assurance. And when you finally reach that tipping point in your process and you are free of addiction at last, you have so much propulsion within your true self that it can move you up the mountain of life in a fraction of the time. Now, to integrate this episode on the nature of addiction, how has addiction shown up in your life, and in what area of your life is it most pronounced? This concludes my episode on the nature of addiction. Please share your experience or your description below so that we can continue this discussion. And we will see you in the next episode on the experience of addiction. Thank you for watching.